those moments that people talk about on the road when whales come up past you and covers you in water, or pods of dolphins swimming off the bows, or even sharks. Those are pretty magical moments. And then looking up into the night sky and seeing the Milky Way, there is no light pollution whatsoever. And that rawness will just be fantastic.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason Gravely, and today's episode we are talking to Team Latitude 35 about they're getting ready to row across the Atlantic Ocean in what is called the Talisker Whiskey Challenge. It's a 3,000-mile row from the Canary Islands to Antigua, and it's in a classic ocean rowing boat, a team of four, so you do two shifts. One shift rows, the other shift takes a break, and it's 2 hours on, 2 hours off. We've had episodes like this before, but what's different about this is they're a race, and they are contending for a chance to win. They are really going after the ability to win, not just to complete it, but to win. And so the record is, I believe, 29 days. So they're trying to beat that. So, all this done in under a month is pretty wild. But we are catching up with them about what the preparation has been like in 2020, how they've gotten to know each other, because as you'll hear, a lot of them are from the UK, and Dixon, who's the captain, is from the US. And also, by the way, this episode is from my other show, Without Compromise, but it was obviously so appropriate here that I wanted to play it here this week, and I wanted to play it before this weekend because they are starting this Saturday, December 12th. You can download the YB tracking app to follow their, progress, follow the other racers. But it's pretty cool. We're talking to them right before they're going on their adventure, so it'll be pretty neat to see what happens. Follow along on their social media, and we're going to try to do a call in the middle of the race and see how that goes. All right, folks, enjoy the episode, and thanks for everybody who's been writing us lately and suggesting new guests. That really helps. All right, here's the episode. Dixon, Jono, Jimmy, and Todd, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so guys, I know we're coming from all over the world, and I appreciate your time, like I said, but I want to hear, where did this idea start? First of all, folks heard a little bit in the official intro of the episode of what the Talisker Whiskey Challenge is, but do one of y'all mind just talking about a quick summary of the challenge and where this idea came to do it together?
Yeah, of course. So the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge is a 3,000-mile ocean rowing race across the Atlantic Ocean for charity. So we'll leave on December 12th, bound for Antigua. We hope that it should take us right around a month. The world record is set at 29 days. And so our goal is to either hopefully beat that or come somewhere close to it, but ultimately win the race that we're competing in this year. And we'll be rowing in shifts of 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day, two guys at a time. And we have all of our food, nutrition, everything on board that we'll need for the entirety of that race. And there is no outside help. So a question we typically get is, are there any support vessels that are following you? And we are completely unsupported throughout the crossing, and there are about 25 other teams that will be doing the race with us. It ranges from solos up to 5-man teams. As obviously you can tell, we are a 4-man team. And in terms of how the race came to be, the project really kicked off about 2 years ago. I had heard about the race first from a client of mine at the time, and just thought that it was incredibly unique and just a little out there on the spectrum. And Todd and I at the time worked together, and he and I chatted a little bit about the race and decided to pursue it together. Then we had Jimmy and Jono join shortly thereafter, and all doing it for different reasons. But I think we have an incredibly strong team and are really looking forward to the challenge ahead.
Who said what to who? And which one of the four of you had the craziest or most shocked reaction, or is it all just kind of in your wheelhouse?
I think I brought it to the table first, and then it kind of snowballed from there. But I think what's great about the team is that we all are endurance tested in a variety of ways, and both Jimmy and Jono are ex-British military, and so their endurance experience is vastly different from the endurance experience that Todd and I have, and it is no way comparable. And we've each heard about ocean rowing to different extents. I think Jono had heard about this race. Jimmy had an offer to potentially row part of the Pacific. So we're all generally familiar with the challenge, but I think it was me that kind of led with it. And then the four of us all came together and rallied behind the calling.
That's fantastic. So for the rest of you, Jono, Jimmy, and Todd, was it just something you felt like, this is what I want to do, or was it, man, I don't know if I can do this?
Yeah, I think for me, definitely, it was as Dixon said, it was on my radar. It was something that I'd heard about people doing, and I remember it's one of those things you hear a friend of a friend might be doing, and you sort of go, "Wow, that's pretty crazy. That's intense." But I'll ever get a chance to do that. But something that I'd always would have loved to have done, and then I ended up meeting Dixon and Todd and finding out that they were obviously embarking on this pretty epic undertaking, and I think I sort of casually mentioned, I'd love to do that, and actually it turns out that they were still looking for a sort of an additional member of the crew, and so it quite quickly became something that you kind of have to go from that transition of sort of, oh, this is something I quite like to do, to actually, is this something you want to commit to, really spend a portion of your of your life kind of training for, both sort of physically and mentally. But I think once I kind of very quickly wrapped my head around that, I didn't look back. I don't know about Todd and Jimmy if they felt the same.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I hadn't actually really thought much about the race and didn't know an awful lot about it until I met Dixon, and he told me about the race. I'd spent multiple years running and cycling, and previously played rugby, and I think I was in the mindset of trying to find my next big challenge. So I guess the question from Dixon came at the right time. I went off that night and did as much research as I could, watched every YouTube video there was on the race, and I kind of decided immediately that I wanted to do it. I said yes to Dixon, and then I asked my girlfriend at the time if she was supportive, and thankfully she was. I'm hugely looking forward to it.
She's so supportive, though, Todd, that she's going to marry you now as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you said former girlfriend or at the time, and I was thinking, oh man, well, I don't know what that is now. But what were you going to say, Jimmy?
I'm very much like the others, Mason. They're always looking for a challenge, and for me, that there's an awful lot of growing interest in ultra events. That I personally think there's nothing quite like rowing an ocean, and for everything that Dixon said, that true nature of being fully unsupported, and that you are days, if not weeks, away from any help at all. So you need to be absolutely well drilled and honed in everything you're doing and prepped for it. So that all of those things coming together, and actually a team with different skill sets and like-minded individuals with, ultimately, we all have the same goal in mind as well. And that was the key part as well, finding people that wanted to go out and win this race. I think in previous years, a lot of people, as Todd's alluded to, looked at videos of them doing it and what have you, and it was just a challenge and we'll get over there. Now it's very much growing into a very competitive event, and to have three other individuals who have come together to form this team and to be part of that is the best thing.
Yeah, I'd also add too that, and this is total credit to the team, but this has not been an easy year by any means. Not only do three of us live in London and one of us, myself, live in New York, but we've also battled with the obvious pandemic that we've never dealt with in our lifetimes or others before. And through that, not being able to travel, not necessarily being able to go to a gym, and kind of in the face of adversity, adapting to that situation and coming out on the other side now, a little over 40 days away from the race, ready to do it, is, I think, a testament to our team, and something that I think we're hugely proud of, as every other team is. So now Todd's going to be eating mid-podcast to carb up.
Oh, yeah, taking shifts. taking shifts just like you will on the boat. So guys, here at Athletic Brewing, our motto essentially is brew without compromise, which means, no matter what challenge we face, we have to stick to quality. We have to stick to our recipes, to what we know, to our customers, and just absolute quality, because that's how a crazy idea like non-alcoholic beer is even going to have a chance to make it. For something like this, it just seems so similar that you need to pursue everything without compromise. Being 40 to 50 days out, not that long out, and with everything that's gone on this year, having to do everything without compromise on your end, I'd love to hear from each of you about what you are most maybe apprehensive about or anxious about, or what you think will be the biggest challenge that as you look forward to the event.
Sure. I think I can kick it off. I think the biggest challenge and kind of what's scariest, so to speak, going into this is just the unknowns. We've prepared for, I think, every scenario that we could possibly face, from dehydration all the way to sea survival, and everything in between. But at the end of the day, we just have no idea what Mother Nature will throw at us, and we just have to be ready to adapt for that. And I think in terms of Athletic Brewing's without compromise motto, this pursuit is something that there are no compromises. As soon as we leave shore, there's 100% commitment, and really there needs to be 100% commitment as soon as you join the team. And so I think that's something that, regardless of the unknowns and what's to come, whatever it is that Mother Nature throws at us, or whatever happens with our boat, the fact is that we can't compromise, and we don't want to. And we're striving to do this the best way that we can with the best guys we got, and we're really excited about that.
I think from my perspective, I'm probably most worried about like letting down the team and getting injured or being seasick. To Dixon's point, you can't predict everything, and seasickness is probably one of the things that I think most people in this race are concerned about or worried about, because until you're out in real ocean conditions with 20-foot swells, it's hard to prepare for that. And so I think that's probably my biggest worry is that, and kind of letting down the team and having to spend time off the oars and people pick up the slack. But even during the preparation for this, we've all had to do more or less depending on what we've got going on in our daily lives. So I think it's all part of being a team.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, and sort of not wanting to kind of jump on the bandwagon, but I think, look, Todd and Dixon are absolutely right. There's things you can't simulate. There's things you can't prep for. The weather, the conditions, the ocean. You can't, and the seasickness. You can't really simulate that. I think we've been hugely uncompromising in terms of our training this year, and we haven't compromised on that, even though clearly it's been a pretty uniquely challenging year in terms of time available to train, being able to get into the gym. We've had to kind of adapt and improvise a bit and overcome those hurdles. So for a lot of us, it's been adapting to getting a rower in your back garden. It's been sort of going for long runs because we haven't been able to do sort of particularly endurance strength training in the gym. And I'm hoping that mentality of not compromising whatever is thrown at us will persist during the crossing itself. But as I say, it's something we can't simulate. We'll just have to take it sort of, I won't even say one day at a time, one shift at a time.
Yeah, there's not much more to add to that, really. The guys have covered it off. I think also we've all talked about it, the physical side of it, but the mental resilience is probably equal or maybe even bigger at times. And that's a dynamic between each of us as well. And living on a boat which is only 28 foot long, and there is no privacy. You are doing absolutely everything in front of each other. I don't think many other people, doesn't matter what you've experienced before, be it from the military for Jono and I, or anything else, that you don't really live in that such confined space with individuals. And so that will be a hell of a test as well, not just the elements, and battling through that.
Absolutely. You brought up so many things I didn't even think about. Of course, seasickness. How could I overlook that? That is, I mean, that would count me out pretty much right from the beginning. But Jono, you mentioned shifts. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because this is such a niche. So few people actually know the kind of what ocean rowing entails, and the shifts are a big part of it. Could you expound upon that a little?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think the perceived wisdom, and clearly there's a balance, right, between the sort of the time spent on the oars and the time that you spend either sort of resting, recovering, administering yourself, eating, or kind of doing maintenance work on the boat. And I think the sort of the perceived wisdom is that it's 2 hours on the oars, 2 hours off. I think it does depend on a lot of factors. For us, as we've previously said, we are hoping to go out and win the race. So there will be times when either the weather's behind us or against us, where we'll have to kind of tailor that accordingly. In which case it'll be probably closer to 2 hours on the oars, 40 minutes off. And during that 40 minutes, it's going to be pretty frantic. Either getting food prepared, doing any required maintenance on the boat, looking after our hands, looking after our bodies, and then ultimately, just trying to get a bit of rest as well, as sleep will be crucially important. So that's the kind of shift pattern that we're going to adopt. It'll be hugely collaborative amongst ourselves in terms of what we think the right shift pattern will be for any given day and any given conditions. It might be that we are able to build up a bit of a lead. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but in which case we can maybe sort of just ease off slightly, or it may be that we're battling it out and we need to be pushing on these 2 hours on, just 40 minutes off. So that's the kind of the shift pattern that we'll be taking over the sort of the course of the race. It will alter slightly. We've also got a sort of home team who will be sort of doing our weather routing for us as well. They'll clearly have input into that as well. They might say, look, you'll be rowing into the wind, into the currents for a couple of hours or days. We're going to need to see 3 of you on the oars at any one time. So it's going to be back up to 2 hours on, 40 minutes off, and so that we can continue to make some headway. So that's sort of what life will look like, sort of, on a kind of daily basis. And as I say, it's probably going to be a case of just taking it, one shift at a time.
2 hours on, 2 hours off, round the clock, 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Have you guys done anything like this? I know you got to do a little bit of training. What was that experience like for each of you, testing it out?
I think actually probably the last weekend of training that we did together is probably, I think we probably all agree was the most beneficial, because of the issues that Dixon mentioned earlier around travel and, generally given COVID, the challenges with getting out on the water. We ended up doing a lot of our training later on in the year than I think you would typically in any other year. So we were still training at the beginning of end of September, beginning of October. And so the last weekend that we went out, it was 25 knots winds. It was 8-9 degrees. It was raining. Thankfully, we had our wet weather gear. We've got a kind of foul weather gear from Musto, which we had delivered on the Friday before we left on the Saturday morning. Gosh. Because without it, I think it would have been a different story. But that weekend, we did around 35 hours of rowing at one time. We did around 50 hours in total. And of the 35 hours, nearly 12 hours of it we spent rowing 3 people at a time. As Jono said, 3 up, 2 hours on, 40 minutes off, into a headwind and against the tide, going for about 3 hours, we were almost going nowhere. In some pretty rough conditions. So I think that was great for us. At the time, it was, felt pretty miserable, but, looking back and afterwards, we're all pretty thankful that we went through it. I think out of everyone in this year's race, we probably trained in some of the hardest conditions. So it's, I think when you say 2 hours on, 2 hours off for 24 hours a day for a month, we did that for, call it a day. We were pretty shattered after it. But to think that we've got to repeat that for a month is a bit daunting. But clearly you get into a bit of a rhythm as well, and hopefully not every day is that tough.
Yeah, I would say to Todd's point, not only do you have to log a minimum of 120 hours on the boat ahead of the race, but There's also a number of certifications that we need to get, like short range radio, sea survival, navigation, first aid, and then there's an ocean rowing course that's led by Atlantic Campaigns that are the organizers of the race. So there's a huge amount of just general admin that goes into even getting yourself to the race, aside from just the actual physical training itself. And I think one of we had our first real training camp in August, and it was supposed to be months before that, but obviously got delayed due to COVID, which was a 5-day kind of baptism by fire, so to speak, where I would say we were spending 9 or so hours rowing during the day. We would then come into shore, have a little bit of a strategy session, and then go back out at night. And the first night we were out on the water by ourselves, it was thundering, lightning, and absolutely pouring rain. So Mother Nature definitely did not take it easy on us for our training, but I think ultimately that'll really help us come the Atlantic.
You don't want training to just be a nice day out on the pond, You want it to be something rough so that you can really get a feel for what it's going to be like. So Todd, I saw you snacking on something a little earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about what nutrition is going to look like? I think a lot of folks are going to have questions about that. What are you going to be eating the whole time?
Yeah, it's a good question because the race is it's fully unsupported. So we have to take all of our food. We have solar panels on board that power our water maker and all of our navigation equipment. And yeah, so as it relates to nutrition, there's a minimum requirement of calories that we have to take, which is mandated by the race. And it works out to be approximately 5,000 to 5,500 calories per person per day. And we have to take a minimum of 55 days, which equates to a little over 1 million calories that we'll be taking on the boat with us, which is a lot when you try and fit it all into a boat that's 29 feet long. We split it broadly into kind of 3. So a third of our calories will come from like dehydrated, freeze-dried food. And we've been supported by a company called Firepot that produce kind of adventure type food. Things from porridge to granola to dal and spinach to Dixon's favorite, which is a spaghetti bolognese.
Delicious.
So we have a lot of freeze-dried food, which you add water to, and you can eat hot or cold, depending on if we can boil water. And then the other third of calories come from a company called Resilient Nutrition, and they make it's a product called Long Range Fuel, which is a nut butter based food. They come in 100 milliliter sachets that are around 550 calories per sachet. So it's a very good way of taking in a lot of calories in a short space of time. And they have a few variants, some with caffeine, some without, some with added protein, some without. So we'll be eating 3 or so of those a day. And then lastly, we've made snack packs, which everyone refers to as snack packs. So they're just small bags of around 1,500 calories of, fruit, nuts, chocolate, other protein bars and biltong, for example, that just are things that will give us some, home comforts and maybe things that we'll like eating that we'll also snack on during the day. So yeah, the goal is to try and eat between 5,000 and 5,500 calories a day to not lose too much weight and keep us powered.
Unbelievable to think you're going to do all that and still lose weight. The average rower loses weight. So it's incredible. And to be able to fit it all in there, you also have to have somewhere to actually sleep. I hear that you're going to be having kind of bunk mates together. I think Dixon and Jono are going to be together because they're Top Gun fans and they got a lot of the same interests. And then Jimmy and Todd together. How is sleeping going to work? What's that going to look like? A lot of this is just basic stuff for you at this point, but it's so fascinating, so outside the norm. I think people will be interested.
That's the primary reason we signed up, just so we could sleep in cabins with each other.
Here you go.
Right, that's yours, Dixon.
Yeah, Jono, I don't know. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing is, so just for kind of for people's awareness, the boat has got 2 cabins. Exactly, it's got a stern and a bow cabin, and each of those can sleep 2 people. I think just going back to my point around the shifts earlier, really, in an ideal scenario, you've only really got one guy sleeping in there at a time, or whatever it might be, looking after themselves, stretching a little within the kind of confines that you can within the cabin. But look, there is the kind of, the possibility that the sea becomes too rough. We can't have anyone on the oars. In which case there are procedures we can follow, such as deploying effectively a sea anchor, which is kind of like a parachute that you throw out and will keep the boat kind of steady and pointing into the weather. And at that point, it's going to be like sort of two of us in there, in each cabin, sort of cramped up and cozy. And we've had to do a lot of drills during training. Some of those drills have included, for example, anchor drills, so anchoring up for a few hours or overnight. Just getting used to being on the boat, and again, sleeping for a couple of hours, and two people kind of cramped into a cabin. It is cramped, and I suspect it'll get quite hot out there in the Atlantic at that time of year, sort of so close to the equator. But it's something that we'll obviously have to experience. Unfortunately, Dixon and I can just keep quoting Top Gun at each other until we sort of get sick of passing the time. But no, it's going to be just another one of the kind of the challenges I think that we'll have to face potentially.
A little less musical theater than is in Top Gun, though, maybe. Yeah,
a bit of singing of "You've Lost That Loving Feeling."
You can act out some scenes. Wow. So all right. So we've got sleeping arrangements, what we're going to eat. And I know with water, people are going to be asking about that. You're going to have a desalinization system on the boat where you can essentially get endless water, correct?
Correct. And it's really important. Ultimately, this is what sustains us and helps us cook our food and everything. So Todd and I actually went down to go and do a course with the gentleman who makes the water maker. And we turn this on once a day and try to do it in the middle of the day when the sun's at its highest, because it draws so much energy from the batteries, the lithium-ion batteries that we have on board. So we want to make sure that they're fully charged when we do it. But the water maker will draw in water into a well on the boat, and then it will make approximately 30 to 40 litres in an hour. So, and that will see us through for a 24-hour period. If we need to make more, we can. And it's a pretty simple process of high pressure osmosis going through a load of membranes. And ultimately, the water that's born out of that is completely neutral water. There's no minerals in there or anything, any salt at all. And then we add that to our freeze-dried food, or we add minerals and electrolytes to the water to keep us going.
It probably wouldn't make good beer, I don't think.
Hey, we'll have that covered for you. So
good.
I think people are also going to be curious. And this will be probably the last one I ask about, like day-to-day life. But what is the bathroom going to look like? I don't know who's most comfortable answering that, but
I knew that question was coming.
Is there anyone that's really tested this out?
So the short answer is it's a bucket essentially. We have a posh one which is called a luggable loo, which all that means is it has a handle on it and a very basic seat. But I can tell you from personal experience on the weekend that I mentioned earlier, where we had some pretty tough seas, that it's going to take a bit of practice, and I'm the only one that's had any practice on it. So I'm looking forward to to seeing how everyone else gets on. But yeah, look, I think we're going to get very very friendly very quickly, and that's just one of the things that we'll have to get used to.
And Mason, I think just worth mentioning too that the bathroom isn't enclosed or in a cabin somewhere. It is on the deck where you're rowing. So when Todd says that it's public, it's about as public as you can possibly get.
Oh my gosh. I love all the technology involved, from the nutrition to the water purification system to the boat itself, solar panels. And when it comes to the most basic human needs, it's a bucket. It's a bucket with a lid. And good luck in the tossing waves trying to keep your balance and all that. It's going to be something.
Quite a high center of gravity.
Yeah.
So, there's obviously a lot to be, obviously to be nervous about going into this. It's been it's not been the most stressless year. It's been a very stressful year for the world. To do this, to have this sort of right towards the end of this year, I can understand if you're all feeling nervous about it. If your families are feeling nervous about it, I know you all have families, but I did look into each of you. You all have extremely impressive adventure resumes and have lots of experience in lots of different facets of life. What about this, or what aspect of this adventure are you most looking forward to? In a lot of ways, it seems like it might be a mental break in some ways to just row and focus on that for an entire month. What are each of you looking forward to the most?
Aside from using the bucket in front of each other?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, we all know that's number one.
I think, speaking for myself, I think what I'm most looking forward to is just the kind of teamwork associated with it. I mean, to have 4 guys come together to row across the ocean is a huge feat, and without each other, we wouldn't even be able to do this. So what I'm most looking forward to are the time that we spend together. I'm also just looking forward to the calm nights where we'll be 1,500 miles from either continent, and you look up and it's just crystal clear sky, stars out. You have after a beautiful sunset. Potentially you have different wildlife that's swimming by you, whether that's whales, dolphins, flying fish, hopefully nothing too aggressive like a shark. But again, it's all just part of the experience. And I think, what I had mentioned, the fear of the unknown is also what's, I think, really exciting me. We have no idea minute to minute what things will look like. But I'm really excited to be spending time doing something like this with these guys, and also just those serene, calm moments that you have that we've never, and very few people have ever experienced to the extent that we will.
I definitely echo that, but I think actually for me, Mason, you hit the nail on the head. I think one of the things I'm really looking forward to, I think, is the mental break, and it will be one of those things that's so different to anything that we've ever experienced before. I think Jimmy and I have probably had a bit of a taste of sort of a different experience in the military, and I know that endurance athletes get a taste of it as well. But it's one of those situations where your world just becomes so much smaller and simpler in many ways, and you become focused on the next 2 hours or even the next 40 minutes, whatever it might be, and looking after yourself and looking after your team, and looking after your teammates and those around you, and that really becomes your kind of your sole focus and your kind of sole purpose for an extended period of time. And I think that's something that I think I'm looking forward to. So yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. That's one aspect that I hope will kind of sustain me going through it.
I think what's been interesting from my perspective is when Dixon and I and everyone talked about this almost 2 years ago, and we spoke to other teams who have done the race, everyone talks about the race being kind of 2 races. There's a race to get to the start line, and then there is a race that starts on the 12th of December when we all set off from La Gomera. And I didn't really understand it or believe it when people talked about that. Clearly this year has exacerbated that, but it really has been, all consuming, especially trying to, work and hold down relationships and spend time with family and all the other kind of competing, needs and things in your life. So I think there'll be an element of relief when we push off from the start that we've actually got there and we're actually doing it. So for me, I'm kind of just looking forward to, pushing off and knowing that we've done everything we have to get to the start and put ourselves in the best position to win the race.
I think for me, it's really about connecting to the elements, and that ultimately, the oceans occupied a larger percentage of this planet, and I don't think there's any more better time really than to do that and be really at one with it. And we understand the ecosystem so much more and how delicate it is to the rest of the world as well. And those moments that people talk about on the row when whales come up past you and the blowhole goes it erupts and it covers you in water, or pods of dolphins swimming off the bows, or even sharks. Those are pretty magical moments. And then looking up into the night sky and seeing the Milky Way, there is no light pollution whatsoever. And that rawness would just be fantastic.
Those are incredible things to be looking forward. I had a friend one time that sailed around the world, and he told me there were so many nights where the closest people to him were the astronauts in the International Space Station. And that I've never forgotten that. That was one of the most incredible facts. And the sun rises and sun sets out there when nothing is on the horizon. He said, we're to die for. So I'm extremely excited for all of you for what this experience is going to be. And something we always ask everyone that comes on this show, and I would love for each of you to answer, what does it mean to you to live without compromise? Because here we brew without compromise, but what we find is to be able to brew without compromise really takes living your entire life without compromise. So I'd love for each of you to answer that before we wrap this up.
From my perspective, is getting up every day and not making excuses. And I think I think being in a team with these guys and the endeavor we're embarking on, in some respects, makes that easier, because if I'm getting up in the morning at 5:00 a.m. to go to the gym, it'd be very easy to turn around and go back to bed. But I think living without compromise and being true to yourself and actually doing the right thing by your teammates is kind of what I think about every day, and in life in general, that's kind of my approach, but especially when preparing for a campaign and an endeavor such as this, I'm always thinking about not letting the team down and making sure that doing everything I can to better myself and put ourselves in a race winning position.
I think for me, and perhaps it's linked to that, but I think for me, it's living without compromise is grasping opportunities like this one with both hands. It's very easy, I think, to be that guy who says, "Oh, I wanted to do that," or I was going to do that, but but to be the person who does say, actually, I'm going to throw myself into something, even when it scares me, and perhaps maybe especially when it scares you, I think is definitely to what kind of living without compromise meaning to me. And it goes to Todd's point, I think, about being true to yourself and really pushing and discovering yourself. And yeah, I think that's what it means to me.
I agree with what these guys have said. I think, just adding on to that, one of my favorite movies is Dead Poets Society. And there's this great scene that is very famous that most people listening will probably know, when Robin Williams says, "Carpe diem, seize the day." And to me, living without compromise is just that. It's about when opportunities present themselves, grab them, but because you just have no idea when else those things will happen. And you only live once, and you want to live your life to the fullest. And if you're living life to the fullest, you don't want to do it. You don't want to compromise. And I think for us, rowing an ocean, you don't just wake up one day and you're like, I want to row an ocean. Maybe very few times that happens. But I think for each of us, this was really an evolution of a lot of things that we have done in our lives. And I mean, for me specifically, I had never run more than a half mile until my senior year of college. And my endurance track has just evolved from pretty much a neighborhood 5K and half marathon to now rowing across the Atlantic. And to exactly what Todd and Jono said, you take things one step at a time. You seize opportunities when they come, and when you do commit to them, you commit to them to the fullest, and you do it to fruition. And hopefully it goes well. And if not, well, you've learned and experienced something brand new, and I think look forward to whatever's next. And that's kind of the beauty of the journey of life. So,
yeah, I think, Mason, for me, it's really about enjoying the journey. And obviously we have one main aim, and that is to win this race. And as a team coming together, and everything that's been thrown at us through this year, being in different countries and the pandemic and what have you, but you've got to enjoy everything in the build up to it, and you've got to compromise other things in life to make that happen. And so there is a certain element without compromise, but other things do get compromised, and that's a priority list. And the priority for us is preparing ourselves for the race. But as we've learned, the training in the North Sea, off the coast of the UK, it may have been miserable, and thank goodness we had our foul weather kit and everything ready for that. But those stories is what will get us through the actual race as well, and we'll remember that and look back on it. And also, something like this isn't just a short period of time. It, as Dixon first said when we started the podcast, this has ultimately been a 2-year kind of process. And as soon as we step off that boat in Antigua, that is it's finished. And we can't just see that as the goal, get there and it's done. We've got to enjoy everything that goes into it. And that then trails the fault for everything else that we do, and all of those with us as well, because it's not just us rowing. It's also our families and our friends who have been living this as well. And probably some of them are really looking forward to us actually getting to Antigua, so they never hear us speaking about rowing again. But they are very much on the journey with us. And I think that's just amplified by doing these amazing podcasts and speaking to you guys, that people are just so interested in it. And so it does, you eat, sleep and breathe it. And there is no compromise there.
Well spoken, all of you. I know all of you are so just worthy of your own podcast episode. It's very clear. You all have, so much wisdom, experience, fortitude. So I really appreciate you being on and just being able to share the mic and talk a little bit about just even briefly of what this is going to be. Dixon, do you mind sharing? Because I'm actually curious personally, what is going to be the best way to follow along the journey? Because it's long enough to really get into and to really follow along and see the progress, and especially since you're going to be going for a win, which will be very exciting to follow along.
Yeah, of course. Great question. So there's a tracking app called YB Races that you can download, and as soon as the race starts on December 12th, you can download the app and you can track not only us but all the other boats in the race, and it updates every 3 or 4 hours approximately. And that'll tell you the direction that we're moving in, the speed that we're moving in, the distance that we traveled over the past 24 hours. I believe it also tells wind direction, speed, wave height, direction, among other things. So you can tune in there. And then I believe that we will be having another chat via sat phone when we're actually out on the water. So for anyone that's listening today, there will be, I think, a continuation of this when we're actually out there on the water in the middle of the elements that we're really looking forward to.
Oh man, I'm so excited for that. Well, great guys. Well, this episode will release right before you guys leave, so it's going to be perfect timing. We'll plug all those links, and thank each and every one of you for being on. I'm super excited to follow along. It's going to be really inspiring.
Thanks for having us, Mason.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
We'll have some athletics for you ready in Antigua. All
All
right.
Oh yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.